Alright guys, I want to kick off this capstone with a story. I remember walking around my property in Washington with my dad, and we were behind our house, and he was looking around, and then he looked at me, and he asked me, he said, "Parker, you think a log cabin would look nicely where you're standing?" And I took a look around, I looked at him, I said, "Yeah, Dad, yeah, that'd be pretty cool." We both knew in that moment that we were going to build something. And within the next couple of weeks, we started creating a little log cabin. And during our time creating, I remember feeling tired or bored or aggravated. "Dad, when are we going to get this thing done? When can I play around in the little cottage?" And he'd say, "Parker, it's not structured. We can't play in it yet. You're going to kill yourself." No, okay. That's not funny. So constructing with my dad really brought me to be thoroughly in the present with him, and I spent a lot of intimate time with him in that moment. And it wasn't just him; it was with myself and with the Lord. And that's what I did this past year. I pursued time to be present with the Lord in the midst of creation. My sophomore year, I joined a woodworking class with about 15 to 20 other students, and I remember being pretty overwhelmed. There was a lot of machinery and hardware, and I knew that I could build anything I wanted to, but I wanted to create something I could be pretty proud of. So as the year went on, I created my first project, and I remember bringing it home, and I felt really good about myself. I felt accomplished. I felt satisfied about my piece of work. And I continued to make new projects throughout the year, and I actually started to become more excited and intrigued to go to class. I wanted to create, and I wanted to go to this elective that I originally just did to get extra credits. And every time I pieced together a work of art, whether it was a clock, a pen, or a baseball bat of some sort, which these are some of my creations. This is what I built. This was my first project, my sophomore year. And if you guys want, you can pass this around. And then I also built this pen and this bat my sophomore year as well. You guys can pass this around too if you want. And I remember every time I worked on a piece of on a project at that time, or as I do now in the GC, I completely mute the rest of the world out, and I'm calm and I'm focused, and nothing else seemed to be important when I'm working. I feel extremely content, and I need more of that space. I need more of that time where I'm not talking at God, but rather I'm simply just present with Him, and I am still with Him. And I'm not saying that God isn't present with us at any given moment of time. He's always present. But whether we it depends on how we spend our time with Him, on how we truly feel His presence. Throughout my life, I've consistently loved and enjoyed to create and construct new things. And I'll be honest, there are some days where I am a little aggravated or irritated with the tedious steps and doing a task or working or creating something. Although I recognize that God is with me throughout this process and through my growth and development. Ecclesiastes 2:24 says that there is nothing better for a person than to eat and drink and find enjoyment in his toil. The satisfaction of struggle rarely comes in the midst of the process. When you're willing to work for your own pleasures, there is an internal reward. I started off my capstone experience working with Mr. Spector here in the GC, and we refined and developed on a lot of our skills and knowledge. And I remember we grabbed a piece of wood and we put it on the lathe, and I started to work on it. And rather than coming into the piece at an angle like you should, I came in at straight into my project, which is a problem if any of you guys know anything about wood turning. And I remember, Spector would constantly say, "Parker, you need to come into your piece at an angle," and I'd still tend to go straight into my piece. And this really tested my patience. I found that I tend to kind of subside what is told of me to do, and then kind of rush the process. which cost me. It cost me the quality of my piece, and it cost me being present in the midst of creation. And I knew what I needed to do, but as I said, it was just a simple problem of impatience. We also worked on sharpening lathe tools. You can probably, once we go in here, you can probably see the little sharpening system in there. I'll point it out to you guys. And Mr. Spector grabbed his lathe tools and started sharpening his lathe tools. And I remember watching him like, oh, I'll do that, no sweat. And then I grabbed my own tools, and I start working on it. And I was really surprised by the level of difficulty required to properly sharpen them. You had to position your hands and fingers properly and allow for the machine to graze up against your tool rather than shoving it up against the sanding belt. And that's exactly what I did. Again, right? It tested my patience. I wanted to get it done. And so I pressed it up against the machine, and I ended up actually causing burn rings on the steel of my chisel. Sharpening is also pretty tedious, and it's repetitive. Every 15 to 20 minutes, you have to sharpen your tool again because it gets dull from woodworking. And as I continue to perfect this skill, I realized that taking time and being patient in the midst of this creation, it brings greater results, you know, and it doesn't ruin your piece when you're willing to be present in the moment. I also took a Rockler course, which for any of you guys that don't know what Rockler is, it's an industry that sells woodworking machinery and other stuff, and they also teach you courses on how to create things. So I took a course on how to turn a wood bowl. And I remember my instructor was teaching us each step, and I endured every instruction that he gave. It was extremely satisfying watching the carvings fly off of the piece of wood, and I was in awe of how a block of wood would shape into a bowl. And then, not only that, I got to work on my own piece, which brought further satisfaction and further gratitude. And as I was working on my piece, I actually chipped my bowl, and I got pretty frustrated and irritated, and I got down on myself, and then I realized it actually wouldn't have too big of an impact on my end result. This is actually the bowl I worked on in that Rockler course. You guys can pass that around. And so I continued to work on this bowl, and I took my time, and I was willing to be more present. And I also considered the rules more, because when I chipped it, I wasn't considering the rules. And as I was creating, I felt connection, not just to this piece, but like with God, because I was subsiding all other anxieties and fears, and I was simply present in the moment, in the midst of my creation. I felt this connection through indecisiveness, through caution, and through patience. Indecisiveness every time my piece of wood would get caught. It was freaky. And in turn, my caution would be considered more. My patience throughout the whole process would be improved. This is extremely applicable to my life. I want closure, I want results, and I want it now. But I realize that I need to sit within the irritation, because ultimately that's what brings fulfillment. You got to have the ups and the downs. This has allowed me to slow down, not only in my works of art, but also in life, and it's allowed for me to have more patience. I gotta have patience with these guys sometimes. Learning how to create is one thing, but teaching how to create is a whole new world. I actually taught just a couple months ago with Mr. Spector how to create a bowl himself. And I remember coming into this class and there was no real structure involved. I knew how to make a bowl, and I knew I was going to attempt to teach it. So we assembled the bowl, and there was some uneasiness because I turned to Spector and I was basically saying, do your thing, man, start sharpening or start creating a bowl. And after a few catches, my mind started to click, and I started to consider everything that I learned at Rockler. I turned off the lathe, and I showed him how to correctly use the bowl gouge. And when I recall back to the course I took, that was actually the first thing they taught you, because it was a safety issue. So shout out to Spectre for not dying. And then, so we roughed out the beginning processes of making a bowl. And then he turned to me and asked me, what's next? I said, all right, we're going to create this tenon, which is just the edge piece to a bowl. So that way you could clamp it back onto the chuck. And as you create the tenon, you also create the shape of your bowl. So he didn't exactly know how to create the tenon correctly. So I actually grabbed a piece of paper and a pencil and came over here and showed him how to make a tenon. And I was super surprised by this tactic because he picked it right up and started making a tenon. And after that, we put it onto the standard chuck and started gouging out the inside of the bowl and sanded it down. Throughout this experience, a familiar question was asked. What's next, amigo? It felt pretty weird because I'm usually the ones constantly nagging my teachers at what to do next and asking them questions. But this forced me to be aware of the person I was guiding and teaching in that moment. I'm not only present with myself when I'm creating, but I also have to be extremely attentive and aware of the person who is creating and who I'm teaching. Creation doesn't always bring immediate satisfaction. There are many challenges and there are many frustrations in the midst of the process. There are many emotions that arise, and it's not just in creation, but it's also in life. Right? When you chip or split a piece of wood, frustration, sometimes deprecation and irritation will emerge. And it's okay to have those feelings. It's okay to feel overwhelmed. But don't let those feelings keep you away from being in the present moment while you're creating. Allow for them to be there and allow for you to keep chugging forward. And if we're all being honest, right, I'm sure that we all feel moments of irritation and frustration in life. But that's why we have a sense of completeness when things kind of seem to hit a point of understanding and there's just a moment of happiness and fulfillment in your life. And I've noticed, and I've come to this conclusion of if God created us, then we too, in likeness of Him, should also create. Improving my skill is definitely on my list of things to do moving forward, but I also hope for a deeper, more intimate relationship with God. And throughout my time creating, it has deepened my appreciation for who He is and what He has done for me. I hope for continuous growth in myself and in my relationship with God. As Proverbs 3:5-6 says, trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not into your own understanding. In all your ways submit to Him and He'll make your paths straight. I don't want to say this just at a superficial level, but in honesty, I want to go through life and I want to understand that not everything can be understood. I tend towards wanting a graspable answer for everything, but that's just not possible. And throughout my time working here in the Genesis Center and creating, I hope for me to be more present with God and more patient with myself. And for you too, I hope that for you too, whether it's creating or just going through life, being more present with Him and allowing for yourself to just enjoy the simplicities of life. That's my capstone.
Yeah, all right.
Thank you. All right. I'd like to invite you guys into the next room. Show you a few things. Yesterday, I came in here in preparation for Capstone, and I started creating this bowl. And I asked Mr. Spector, hey, what part of the bowl should I show everyone as I'm creating? And gouging out the inside of the bowl is pretty cool, so I'm going to show you this. You guys can talk amongst yourselves. Oh yeah, I got to do that too. Thanks, Dad.
You're welcome, son.
All right. Set this down.
We don't
have a holster for this bull
with that
gouge.
big of a bang.
Alright.
All right.
Do I need to wear glasses?
Bang, bang.
You're good.
Bang. All right. Put this boy on. Safety first. Not for me, obviously.
So maybe we should all stand back a little bit.
No. You guys are good where you're at.
Okay.
Yeah.